Welcome to the next overview for the Economic Analysis of Law class here at Rutgers University. Here we're going to be taking a look at Week 2 and the chapters in the textbook that we are going to be going over for this particular week. First off, we're going to be looking at Chapter 3, which is entitled A Brief Introduction to Law and Legal Institutions. This chapter does not contain much theory, etc. It's more designed to give a background for what the law is, how it developed, and the legal institutions in which law is practiced. So make sure in particular you understand the difference between civil and common law, and particularly how they developed individually. Also, the federal and state court systems in the United States, how they operate and how they interact with one another, and also how the nature, or not how, but when we have a legal dispute, how does a legal dispute evolve? The different stages of a specific legal dispute and how you work your way through that process of a legal dispute. And also, legal rules are not static, they change over time, so make sure you understand the process of how, these legal rules evolve over time. Also, this week we are going over Chapter 4, An Economic Theory of Property, and we are only going up to page 94. So that means you in your textbook, you'll go all the way up to Section 4, which is An Economic Theory of Property, which ends on page 94. And when you're going through this, make sure you have a good understanding of what the legal concept of property is. Legally, what constitutes property. Also, spend a good amount of time on the bargaining theory part, how individuals bargain, how they come up with an agreement, and how that agreement is put in place through a legal contract. So make sure you have a good understanding of that. Also, why property exists in your textbook. In particular, it talks about the origins of the institution of property. So make sure you're comfortable with that. And finally, the section on the economic theory of property is also very important. So for this week, just make sure you realize that Chapter 3 is not as involved as Chapter 4. You should spend probably not most of your time on Chapter 4, but make sure in Chapter 3 you understand the concepts that were talked about. Again, it's not very technical in nature, Chapter 3, but there are terms and definitions in that chapter that you will have to understand for the online assessment from this week.